The World Economic Forum has been changing in a sense over a period of time. There are several questions which are being raised about the nature of the discussions over here, whether it is as significant politically, internationally over a period of time. Somebody who's been coming over here for what, 25 years consecutive years?
Well, except for the couple of years when it didn't happen because of the pandemic, but I've been here every year since 1999, and there was one year when it was in New York.
Right. Sir Martin Wolf with us. Thank you, Sir Martin, very much for being with us. I suppose the big story is the US presidency, Trump coming back into power. One of the key steps which he's announced, widely expected, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. We keep talking about climate over here, and this seems to be a very, very regressive step. Where is the world headed with America taking this decision?
Well, my assumption for a very long time, and I wrote this, I think, first about 10 years, 15 years ago, is this is a very big problem, and we are very unlikely to tackle it effectively. Right. And everything that has actually happened, though I've been arguing for it and writing about it since I really started focusing on it, which was actually even earlier in 2007 after the Stern Review was produced, everything that suggests that I'm right. It is a big problem. The world is actually, basically, we've already passed the 1.5 degrees centigrade increase, about 5 or 6 years earlier than people thought, even the pessimists. And it's what's going to happen is, with the CO2 emissions continuing, the accumulations of concentrations of CO2 rising, the temperature is going to go up and up and up. It'll certainly go past 2, maybe past 2.5. And this is a regressive step. And for India, this is going to be a big problem.
No, it is indeed.
That's the situation, I'm afraid. It's very, very depressing.
Are you bullish on the India story over here, the World Economic Forum, and outside in Davos in general? It just seems to be an India promenade here. There's more curry over here than what you'll find in New Delhi.
Well, I'm a long-term bull on India ever since the reforms, and I've written this often. But I would say my impression is that it's sort of a bit of trouble at the moment. I mean, there is a slowdown. Growth seems to be not as dynamic as I'd hoped. There are, I think, some problems that have arisen from foreign currency intervention, and I think that was a mistake. And I think India needs to get a second or third wind. Right. But I'm assuming, because I know the government, and indeed everyone in India, wants the economy to grow, and the Indian people demand it, and to create jobs, it's impossible not to, that India, which has huge potential, will make whatever changes are needed. But I would like to see growth at 8%.
As opposed to 6.5% at the moment,
possibly even less.
Yes. India enjoys a huge demographic dividend. We've got a very young population. How important is it for India to realize the potential of that demographic dividend, men and women, young of age, to become the developed nation that we aspire to become?
Well, the answer to that is it's clearly important. I think it's most important because it's a matter of human welfare. Yeah. Young people need to be given gainful, fruitful employment. Yes. If a country can't do that, it's not a modern country. Right. Of course, we've been talking about the demographic dividend for India for a very long time because it's existed. But unfortunately, one has to say the data strongly suggest, and my friends in India repeat this, that employment is not doing as well as you would like. They really good jobs in modern activities are relatively scarce. India hasn't really succeeded in creating a huge manufacturing sector with the jobs that went with that, as China did. I think that's a great pity. Yeah. And obviously a lot of people are living pretty well on the sort of margins in informal sector, very insecure, or no employment at all. And I think this is the single most important policy, economic, but also social and political challenge for India.
We aspire in India to become a $10 trillion economy in a finite period of time. Do you believe that even with this level of growth, that is essentially inevitable?
Yes. I mean, I've written a piece which was one of my columns, and I actually delivered it as a lecture also in Delhi last July, the National Council for Applied Economic Research, that I'm not at all sure that India will achieve the Prime Minister's target of being a fully developed country by 2047, but I'm sure it will become overwhelmingly the third largest economy. It will be an economic superpower. Just the size of the population and the skills of the people guarantee that. It will become inevitably a great power, really great power. The only question is how quickly and what it will look like then.
Right.
What sort of, will it be very unequal? Will it be a stable democracy? All these things. But I'm, as I said, a long-term bull on India. How could one not be?
Let's turn our focus back to where we started, the United States. A couple of important other steps which have been... Trump has declared a national emergency at the southern border. He has, of course, got lots of concerns about illegal immigration, but that's one step. Saying that he's going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Where do you see these steps leading America in its equation with countries like Mexico, Canada to the north, and the entire issue of immigration?
Well, there are so many different elements in just that question.
Yes, I apologize.
Separating out. Well, Trump is a posturing bully. There's no way out about it. He has a very transactional view of his life. It was true when he was in business. He is now. He's a first-rate demagogue. He knows how to stir things up. He likes unsettling people. He likes being unpredictable. And he likes power. He wants to hold on to arbitrary power. All this is consistent with that. He's unsettling radically his two most important neighbors. They don't know what's going to happen to them next. He's threatened tariffs. I mean, these are acts of war. I mean, it's clear about it. There's no other way of thinking about it. Think of what India sort of started behaving like that with Bangladesh or Pakistan tomorrow. It would be problematic. It would be problematic. So obviously, this is very, very destabilizing. The emergency decree basically allows him to seize power. It's not an emergency. They had actually reduced the immigration flow radically under Biden. It's not like the first 2 years of the Biden administration. So that's a power grab. He's going to allow him to put the army there, and then he will move even more intrusively, inevitably, to try and get the illegal aliens out of the country. So that's another radical steps. The renaming things is sort of a provocation. More important, I think, is that he's declared he's going to take Panama back. It's a sovereign nation. He's going to invade it. I mean, there's no other way to do it, to seize its principal asset. This is what Russia did with Ukraine. I mean, there's no other way of thinking about it. So he's basically saying, the US used to know, we still have pretended in my first term. It's a new 19th century great power, behaving like a 19th century great power, but in my view, less intelligently. He's like Lord Palmerston, and any Indian will know who Lord Palmerston was, but not as intelligent. So I think it's going to be very, very destabilizing, and that's what it is.
How is he going to engage with China?
That is a really good question, and I think it's the most unpredictable. One of the possibilities on which I'm actually a bit optimistic, he respects Xi. He respects the Chinese system. I think he might say, we'll leave you alone if you leave us alone. We're going to separate our economies. But the Chinese are already getting used to that idea. But we don't want war. I think one of the things that I like about Trump is he really doesn't seem to want wars. And unlike George W., who made this terrible mistake in Iraq. So I think it might be the case that he works out a modus vivendi with China and a modus vivendi with Russia. And that for the world would be a good thing. I think India would agree it would be a good thing. So the people who are most anxious about the Trump administration, I think rightly, are his allies, not these enemies. And if he does do a deal with China on maybe even saying, I don't really care about Taiwan, possible, although there are real security issues there because of the chips, it could be a very good thing.
You spoke about his personal equation with Xi. He's also got a personal equation with Narendra Modi.
Yes, indeed.
How do you really believe that at the level of India-US relations, that personal chemistry can take the relationship forward?
I think that this is a big bet. Right now, the US, Trump, doesn't regard India as a threat. 10, 15 years from now, if India succeeds in growing, I suspect it will view US as a threat. I think India as a threat. I think you have to take that into account. The US has shown it doesn't like rivals. And India could be an important rival 30, 40 years from now. But now, I think he likes Narendra Modi. He has nothing against India. He sees it, the Americans generally see it as a balancing factor against China. Both sides, that's, I think, and generally, basically, as far as I can see, everybody in America thinks India opens huge opportunities. So there might be tariffs are possible, but India's not a huge, it doesn't sell a lot of goods into the US. So there are each possible frictions in IT, but I think unlikely. So I expect relations between this US and India to be rather good.
A final question, TikTok. What does Trump potentially do? Do you see Elon Musk taking 50% ownership?
Well, it's perfectly possible. I'm afraid I view what's going on here as corrupt. I mean, essentially, here we have the richest man in the world, the most powerful capitalist in the world, in the heart of the administration, arranging deals in his favor, which will greatly increase his power in America. He's already got huge power through Twitter, X, and now would have this. And I think, without, it seems, really much investigation of the implications, if that happens, I stress, if, that will be a pretty worrying sign that we are seeing a very rapid shift in the United States towards a sort of plutocratic government, and begin to look a bit like some of the way India does now, and you know what I mean.
Sir Martin, wonderful speaking to you. Sir Martin Wolf over there, we've spoken about all sorts of things. We've spoken about the United States, what the Trump administration might bring in, but also how he remains bullish on India, the India story, the personal chemistry between Trump and Modi. But a lot clearly needs to be done for what he called a third wind to revive the Indian economy, get it back to 8% plus GDP levels.